While the world is still recovering from the pandemic, the issue about net zero carbon emissions has everyone on its toes already. This is especially in focus since in November, COP26 meeting will see countries meet to discuss the Paris Agreement, climate change, and the global carbon emissions. So, hello everyone, welcome to the digital platform of Tarun IAS. I am Nandini Bhatnagar, and in this video, we will be discussing all about the global carbon budget and the net zero target issue. To begin with, let's first know what is Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement, which is also known as the Paris Accord, is a climate change treaty that has been signed by 196 countries. This was signed at a Conference of Parties 21 meeting in Paris on 12th December 2015 and entered into force on 4th November 2016. This is one of the first multilateral agreement projects that have been signed by all countries to combat climate change together. The Paris Agreement is a part of the set 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The agreement is set towards the sustainable development of the environment. Its goal is to limit global warming to well below 2 or preferably 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. According to this agreement, each nation must take significant individual steps to control greenhouse gases and their emissions and achieve a climate neutral world by the mid of this century. This is set to be done by setting NDCs or nationally determined contributions that list steps that will be taken by the nations to control climate changes and also reduce greenhouse emissions. Now let us discuss about the history of the Global Carbon Project. In 2009, Myles Allen and Dave Frame, along with a group of scientists, published a research paper that the height of global warming depends on the emission of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide. In 2013, the IPCC submits a report that states that the limiting global temperature would mean reaching a cumulative emission of CO2 that would eliminate the risk of global warming. In 2014, World Bank President Jim Yong Kim says that a global agreement should be proposed that works towards the achievement of zero carbon emissions before the year 2100. In 2015, the Paris Agreement is agreed to, and all states parties must work towards controlling global emission by the mid of this century. In 2017, Sweden becomes the first country to set its carbon neutrality goal, that is by 2045. In 2018, a special report of IPCC states that limiting the global temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius means achieving carbon neutrality. In 2019, the UK becomes the first G7 economy to commit to its carbon neutrality by 2050. In 2020, China, which is one of the largest carbon emitter, sets its carbon neutrality to be 2050 as well. Did you know that till date 68% of the countries have pledged to cover carbon neutrality? Now, we must discuss what is the global carbon budget. A global carbon budget determines the input of CO2 to the atmosphere by emissions from human activities, the output being the carbon reservoirs on land or in the ocean, like forests. This budget is reported by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. This maintains the amount of carbon emissions is important because the high emissions make the world more vulnerable to global warming. Now let us talk about what is net zero target. Net zero emissions mean the carbon utility of a country. It, however, does not mean that the carbon usage can be reduced to zero. But the carbon emissions cannot be reduced to zero, which means the carbon emissions need to be absorbed, which can be done by forests. Many countries have signed the net zero carbon emissions up till now, including United States of America and China. According to this target, the carbon emissions of the world need to be in check to stop the global temperature rising to 1.5 degrees Celsius. For doing this, net zero emissions target must be achieved by 2050. However, some of the people are saying this to be unfair and unequal for the developing countries who cannot be expected to fulfill this promise among a toppling economy, unemployment, and poverty still existing in large parts of their countries. And many argue that if this is to be implemented, it means that developed countries like US and China need to attain this by 2030. US, as the highest emitter of greenhouse gases, has set 2060 as its achieving deadline for net zero target, while China is expected to fulfill its promise by 2050. This brings us to some issues with the net zero target. Let's discuss them. An important point in this concept is that even though this project is aimed at achieving carbon neutrality by the mid-century, it will mean increasing the carbon usage immediately, which creates a harmful case of increase in gases and rise in temperature. This issue also brings to the fore the unequal and unfair pressure that is being put on developing countries like India, while highest violators of greenhouse gases like US and China continue to set their goals according to their own convenience. So, let us now discuss why India is objecting to signing this deal. In the upcoming meeting of Conference of Parties or COP26, India will be pressurized to agree to the project and sign to it. However, there are a few reasons for the objection. Let us look at them. India is the only country to be opposing the net zero target, mostly because it is the one that would be the most affected by it. You might ask why? Well, here is the reason. In the next decade or so, India's carbon emissions are only expected to grow to fulfill the growing needs of the population that is still recovering from the post COVID era. The carbon reducing technologies that exist right now are either too unreliable or extremely expensive. Another important reason for India's objection is that major countries have all signed the Paris Agreement and it does not feel the need to sign on a different project for the same reason. In its first NDC, India has committed to cut carbon emissions by 33 to 35% from 2005 levels within the year 2030, and Indian authorities say the country is set to exceed the target. It has set 450 gigawatt renewable energy target, an electric vehicle policy, an international solar alliance, and a national mission for hydrogen, all along with promising to increase the forest cover in the country. As we know that all eyes are now on India as we near the COP26 meeting that will be hosted by UK in Glasgow from 31st October to 12th November. The country is expected to focus on access technology and finance in the conference and also support the transparency of the project moving forward. Well, this was all about the topic today. We hope you liked this video. Don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for latest current affairs. Thank you.